a wonderful question to think about what the living, risen Christ has meant to me. And I think all of us have somewhat slightly different answers based on our personalities, who we are. So if you'd known me before I had met Christ, you would still see a lot of the same kind of personality traits. I've always been a little more performance-oriented, wanting to do things. But I think before I knew Christ, to me the doing was about me and feeling good about myself and good enough or the best. Any of those kind of standards were what I was aiming for. I wanted to be valedictorian. I wanted to be the best in my class. When I met Christ in high school, that performance got shifted in some much healthier ways. I began to care a lot less what people thought of me and a lot more what God thought of the choices I was making. I began to see that the gifts and abilities he had given me were those talents they talk about that we have in the parable. Talents to invest for his kingdom, not because my worth depends on it, not because my salvation depends upon it, but because that's part of the gift of being part of God's family, is getting to work to help make his kingdom not come, but to be part of that kingdom work, to be called to be part of that. And so for me, the whole shift of my life has changed. So I don't work, like I said, to feel better about myself. I don't work because I'm trying to get salvation. I believe I get a chance to invest every day in my Father's kingdom, and that this temporary life is an opportunity to do that. So it's made a big change in how I see success, what I see as my purpose in life, and how I understand my relationship with my Lord and with the people around me. I think it's a great question to ask how Christ's victory over the cross is really impacting how many of us are addressing this current situation we find ourselves in, with this virus and the world being shut down in many ways, and some people being called to work heroically and harder than ever, others being called to accept this quiet and more boring life, perhaps. So how does the risen Christ help us to understand where we're at? Well, one, I think, is just attitude. And I became a Christian in high school, and so a lot of things in my life began to change at that point. And I remember a particular time when my mom and I were on a plane, and we were heading back home after being involved in some kind of activity I was involved in. And my mom looked at me, I was reading something before the plane took off, and she said, "Oh, I get nervous before flights. I'm always worried something's going to happen. Do you ever get nervous about flights?" And I looked up at her and I said, "Well, Mom, we go home either way." And I think that's just a gift that God gave me at that time when I first began to follow him, and understanding that this is a temporary home that I'm in, and I'm heading to my permanent, real home. And so for me, keeping that firmly in mind helps me to deal with the kinds of panics and crisis and concern. And certainly we ought to all be praying. I think we ought to all be taking these things seriously. But at the very heart of things, I feel peace, because no matter what happens, I'll either be in my temporary home for longer, doing the work that God's called me to do, or I'll be in my permanent home, where I'm heading anyway. So I think that attitude has really helped me to feel more centered, to feel peaceful, and to see meaning in the place where I'm at right now. What can I do to help? What are the things I can do for my neighbors? What are the prayers I can be doing? Who can I be checking in with? And then to know that eventually, whether it's now or at another time, I'm going to be heading to my real home.